Picture this. A family in Texas watches the news and hears that American troops might be heading to Venezuela, and the headline reads, Operation Strength. That image alone sparked a wave of anxiety across the country, and it's exactly the kind of moment we're unpacking today.
That anxiety is rooted in a very real statement from Vice President Kamala Harris, who called Donald Trump's alleged plans for Venezuela unlawful and unwise. In her remarks, she warned that wars for regime change or oil have historically cost American families dearly, and she's demanding accountability now.
What you'll hear in the next few minutes is a deep dive into the legal, historical, and political layers of this debate. We'll explore why Harris says this isn't about democracy or drugs, but about oil and a regional strongman mindset.
We'll break the conversation into four clear subtopics: past U.S. interventions in Latin America, the legality of deploying troops without congressional approval, the economic incentives behind a Venezuela push, and the domestic fallout for everyday Americans.
And we'll sprinkle in some surprising facts, like how many billions have already been earmarked for the plan, and why the American public is increasingly skeptical of foreign adventures.
So stay tuned, because the first piece of the puzzle, how history repeats itself in Latin America, will change how you view today's headlines. And that's just the beginning.
Let's start with history, Alex. The US has a long track record of intervening in Latin America, from the 1954 Guatemalan coup to the 1989 Panama invasion. Each of those actions was framed as protecting democracy, yet they left lasting scars.
Exactly, Sarah. And what most people don't realize is that those interventions often coincided with American corporate interests, especially oil. In Venezuela's case, the country holds the world's largest proven oil reserves, making it a magnet for geopolitical maneuvering.
But here's what's really interesting. Harris points out that Trump's plan lacks any legal authority from Congress. The Constitution requires a declaration of war or at least an authorization for use of military force. And we haven't seen either for Venezuela.
That's a crucial point. The War Powers Resolution of 1973 was designed to prevent exactly this kind of unilateral action. Yet presidents have often found ways around it. The legal scholars I've spoken to argue that deploying troops without a clear exit strategy violates both domestic law and international norms.
And the exit plan is missing entirely, right? Harris warned that there's no roadmap for bringing troops home, which mirrors the chaos we saw in Iraq after the 2003 invasion. The cost, both human and financial, can balloon quickly.
Exactly. The Pentagon's own estimates suggest that a prolonged engagement in Venezuela could cost upwards of $15 billion in the first year alone. That money, as Harris notes, could be redirected toward lowering energy costs for working families.
What do you think, Alex, about the oil angle? Trump's rhetoric frames this as a fight against a brutal dictator. Yet the underlying motive appears to be securing oil contracts for American companies.
That's a fair assessment. Historical patterns show that regime change operations often align with resource extraction goals. In the 1970s, for example, the U.S. supported coups in Chile and Argentina partly to protect American business interests in copper and agriculture.
And here's where it gets fascinating. Trump recently pardoned a convicted drug trafficker linked to Venezuelan cartels, which Harris highlighted as evidence of a double standard. It raises the question, are we really fighting for democracy, or are we playing a high-stakes game of oil and influence?
That double standard undermines credibility, Sarah. When leaders prioritize personal or political gain over legal frameworks, it erodes both domestic trust and international alliances. Allies in the region have already expressed concern over any unilateral U.S. move.
Speaking of allies, the Organization of American States issued a statement last month urging a diplomatic solution. They warned that a military incursion could destabilize the entire region, leading to refugee flows and economic disruption.
And that's why Harris's call for leadership that puts American families first resonates. She argues that the priority should be lowering costs, enforcing the rule of law, and strengthening alliances, not chasing oil in a distant country.
But the American public seems divided, Alex. Recent polls show that while 55% oppose another foreign war, a smaller 30% still believe the US should intervene against dictators. The gap highlights a communication challenge for policymakers.
Indeed, and what most people don't realize is that public opinion, often shifts after seeing the human cost. The Vietnam War is a stark example. Initial support evaporated once casualties rose and the purpose became unclear.
Here's where it gets fascinating. If the administration were to pursue diplomatic channels, there are already back-channel negotiations with Maduro's opposition leaders. Those talks could pave the way for sanctions that pressure the regime without risking lives.
That approach aligns with Harris's emphasis on rule of law. Targeted sanctions, combined with support for civil society, have historically been more effective than outright military action in achieving political change.
And what about the economic angle for everyday Americans? If we redirect the $15 billion earmarked for a potential war into renewable energy infrastructure, we could lower electricity bills and create jobs.
Exactly, Sarah. Investing domestically not only boosts the economy, but also reduces dependence on foreign oil. A strategic win that aligns with Harris's vision of putting the American people first.
So, to sum up this segment, the key takeaways are: historical precedent warns us of costly interventions, the legal foundation is shaky, oil motives are evident, and there are viable diplomatic alternatives that benefit both foreign policy and domestic priorities.
And that's just the beginning, because next we'll explore how this debate could reshape the 2024 election landscape and what it means for future administrations. Stay with us, because the political ramifications are profound.
Looking ahead to the election, candidates are already using the Venezuela issue to signal their foreign policy credentials. Some are painting Trump's approach as bold, while others echo Harris's cautionary stance.
What's particularly interesting is how this issue intersects with voter concerns about inflation and energy costs. If a candidate can convincingly argue that avoiding costly wars will keep gas prices down, that message could sway swing voters.
And the media's role can't be ignored. Coverage that emphasizes the human stories, families displaced by conflict, often shifts public sentiment more than abstract policy debates.
That's a great point, Sarah. In fact, a recent study from the Pew Research Center found that narratives focusing on personal impact increase opposition to foreign interventions by 12%.
So, listeners, when you hear political ads that glorify strength abroad, ask yourself, whose strength are we really measuring? Is it national security, or is it a shortcut to economic gain?
Exactly, and that question brings us back to Harris's core message. Leadership should prioritize lowering costs for working families, enforcing the rule of law, and strengthening alliances. Those pillars offer a roadmap that avoids the pitfalls of past interventions.
Before we wrap up, let's leave you with a thought. If the US were to redirect its focus from oil-driven military adventures to renewable energy and diplomatic engagement, how might the global balance of power shift? That's a scenario worth imagining.
We've covered a lot today: history, legality, economics, public opinion, and the political fallout. The common thread is clear: unchecked military ambition can cost more than any potential gain.
And remember, the real power lies in informed citizens who demand accountability. If you found this discussion eye-opening, share it with a friend and keep the conversation going.
For those who want to dig deeper, we've linked a reading list in the show notes, including the full text of Harris's statement and a briefing on the War Powers Resolution.
Next week on Policy Pulse, we'll explore the rising influence of cyber operations in modern warfare and what that means for everyday privacy. You won't want to miss it.
Until then, stay curious, stay critical, and keep asking the tough questions. Thanks for listening.
See you next time. And remember, policy starts with you.